educationist, activist, and by now a veteran of the hunger strike. Please welcome Sonam Wangchuk. Welcome to Newslaundry, sir. So, firstly, I want to sort of ask you what happened on July 18th as you saw it. What did you make of the government's decision to forcibly remove you from Jantar Mantar and admit you to Safdarjung Hospital? Like, what did you think of it at that time?
If you're asking what actually happened also,
Yes.
I had just got up and was maybe chatting with people, and suddenly there was some noise and confusion, and some well-built people in civilian dress came to not very impolitely take me. Yes, when I resisted forcibly, but I don't think they had intentions to harm me, but they put me on some bed sheet, and then there was some sort of a stretcher while covering me from all sides. So I understood this is my forceful removal. I didn't mind that. I've seen many such things, and they end up benefiting you in the cause. So I was taken aback and confused for a moment, but then I saw there was no point resisting too much, and I have always seen that they don't harm you, rather help you in the bigger picture. So they took me forcibly. I couldn't do much, and therefore I gave up resisting and quickly bundled up into the ambulance and then driven away to the hospital.
Yeah.
Now, if you are asking what did I think of the act and why it was done, well, overtly, and their reason was my health, but I think it was anything but my health of the system, health of the government maybe, but not my health, because I had done similar lengths of fast in the past also, and no one was as worried about my health. It was kind of house arrest, so that I could be disconnected from the movement, and I couldn't make the appeals to the conscience of the nation as I was doing from the place. I was not only sitting on fast or hunger, but I was also shaking the conscience of the nation. Now, if it was only my health, then they would have taken care of only my health. But more than my health, they took care that I didn't have any mobile devices or internet or laptops. That was their primary concern in the hospital ICU, I think. So it was not just my health.
What did the Delhi police say to you when they picked you up, and how did they treat you? Because according to people at the site, the police allegedly said some not so nice words to you. And did they, and like, for example, one of the sort of witnesses say that the police said, "Ut be," expletive, इधर बड़ा बड़ा बहुत टाइम हो गया तुझे, बहुत नाटक हो गया तेरा, वगैरह वगैरह. Did they use this kind of language?
I didn't hear, honestly. I didn't hear those. They may have shouted or exchanged unpleasantries, but more with the people who were resisting my arrest or my bundling. There were some very kind and cute and small sized volunteers who were really resisting these very well-built wrestler types. So they may have had that. I either didn't hear, which is good also, or they didn't target me. Honestly speaking, I didn't hear any such things. They just were busy packing me up physically to whatever resistance I put up. I didn't much. In the beginning I did, and I said, this is illegal. Why are you doing this? I have a right to be here. I haven't violated any laws or some such things. And I don't think they answered or responded or Yeah, I didn't hear, at least I can say I didn't hear such things. But I'm sure they did that to people who were resisting me, and not many. There were only few people on the stage, others couldn't come. So it was rather a very one-sided exercise.
Yeah, I mean, so as you said that they took away your phones, they took away your devices, and basically tried to cut you off from the movement. And also initially, I think your wife Gitanjali wasn't initially allowed to see you as well. What was going through your mind at the time when you were basically isolated from the rest?
No. They not only took away my phones, or took away, I wouldn't say, because I didn't take my phone with me.
Okay.
So they made sure I didn't get any devices. This I learned from the way every person who came to meet me, like my relatives, each one was frisked thoroughly to not take their own phones, leave aside mine. And I don't know about Gitanjali not being allowed to meet me. I was told your first relations will be allowed, which were 3 of them. And maybe outdoors they were restricted, but I didn't come to know of that. 3 people were allowed, but each after thorough frisking. So it was more about devices of communication than anything else. And there was no ground. There was no ground for why.
Yeah.
That's why I kept asking them, under what written order are you restricting these things? At one point, I don't want to keep it secret. I asked Gitanjali to bring my laptop, or this large tablet, to read and write. And she did bring, and somehow they hadn't thoroughly checked or whatever. And I said, don't hide, just bring it. This is my right to read and write. And it came into my room, and a lady police officer was sent to physically snatch it from my hands, physically snatch it. And I pulled off it and kept asking, show me the order under which you are doing this physically to me. And they couldn't. Their officers came and they did a thorough check of the device, its hard drive, its secret folders, which they assumed, to see if I had made any videos or whatever, which I hadn't. So I gave them all the time to check. And finally they gave it back. Otherwise they were saying we may have to kind of confiscate it. Again, I was saying, with what legal, sanction are you doing this? They had no answers. They just barged into what was supposed to be an ICU and were doing these things. Yes.
So I would like to move ahead a little bit. On July 22nd, you had written a letter to Union Ministers JP Nadda and Jitendra Singh. I think it's on your socials as well, on your X account. You called for, quote, consideration of the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan, which some would argue is a softer line than the CJP's standing demand for his resignation outright. So I have about 2 follow-up questions from that, which is, why the climb down in demands, and were you acting on your own, or did you discuss this with the CJP leadership before making this call?
So 22nd, first of all, is when after I was taken to Medanta from Safdarjung. Apparently, as a free citizen, I was allowed to choose where I wanted to go, only to find out that it was equally a prison with security forces all around in the same numbers, if not more. But one difference was, I was allowed to have my mobile device. Anyway, that's not so much the question you have asked. But yes, that was also on the second day after the ministers, JP Nadda and Jitendra Singh ji, visited the first time, which was the same night after I was taken to Medanta. Late on the same night, they also arrived and they urged me to break the fast. And I asked them about the resignation and the compensation. And most importantly, I added a new demand that none of these students who are protesting or who took part in the march should be legally harassed. Okay. They had the most reservations about the resignation of the minister, which was my first point when they met me on 21st. So they had the most reservation about that. And by that time, I was sensing what all was going on, because now I had a mobile device, although it was not easy to connect to anybody, because at Jantar Mantar there was a jammer kind of system, so you couldn't connect to most of them anyway, nor were they allowed to meet me to discuss anything. So consultation almost was impossible. Nobody could be called among them, and they couldn't meet me from CJP. But I was trying to sense the situation, and two things I sensed: that resignation of the minister was not the most important thing for me. I said in a video, I think differently. I don't do the same usual things that people do. I, at that point and more later, saw the need for the legal safeguard from harassment for the leaders of CJP and other students. Yeah, because I saw the resignation part was the easiest for the government to do, and it was doing the most damage to them. Actually, if I left it like that, without pressing it too much, the government was doing much more damage than if I had got them to do the resignation. Not that they were in a frame of mind to immediately do it in their own best interest, which I would have done if I was them. I would have immediately done the resignation part, but they were showing most reservations about that. And my calculations said that they'll be doing themselves the most damage, one, if they don't do, so they will do soon rather than late. Secondly, CJP was, by that time, I don't remember through a person or through a message or somehow, had intimated me that even if you break the fast, we'll continue with the demand of resignation. Okay. So firstly, seeing that not pressing on the resignation bit was going to harm the government much more than anybody else, and therefore this will come sooner rather than later. Secondly, that CJP was going to take that up anyway. I saw the role I could play, most importantly, was in demanding that there will be no legal harassment and FIRs on the student leaders and CJP leadership and others who participated. So I made that the biggest issue. Legal advisors somehow we consulted, and they all said, this the government is never going to accept. They can't give you, especially in writing, because they had said after the ministers left, it was IB who was in communication with me. Their officers were going back and forth on this with the ministers. And my main demand was that I should get it in written. And that was their biggest hesitation. For the longest, there was a stalemate. And finally, on 23rd night, I was told they are ready to give it in writing also, which is when I agreed. So yeah, there is an added confusion that was almost man-made that caused a lot of damage and confusion among people, and particularly for me. So when at midnight these ministers came, it was almost impossible to get other leaders, because I had very much wanted that apart from ministers from the government, there should be leaders from the opposition of different parties, so that it is like a national resolution we have found, and the student leaders and leaders from Ladakh. Now they came unannounced at midnight, so this was not looking possible. Therefore, I made a condition to the ministers. But before that, I must say that the confusion about who I broke the fast with, the ministers, that is something I don't think much about, because in Ladakh, in all protests and hunger strikes, we consider it as a sign of victory when the ministers or representatives from the government come and say, we accept your demands, please break your fast. That's considered winning and the government conceding. And this has been so in all my previous fasts. But there was confusion spread that I took soup from the ministers of the very government that we were fighting. So in my mind, there was no confusion. But in addition to that tradition, I had actually wanted and put a condition to the ministers that I want leaders of all the opposition parties to be present when I do this, although we consider enough that the ministers there are there. But in this case, when so many parties are also in one voice demanding the same things, so since this was not possible at that hour, I put a very clear condition and said that now, since it is not possible, let us not break this news till we have other leaders from other parties or those who have come and their photographs are also put, and therefore the news will be broken by us and not by you. Yeah? With all the pictures of other leaders also coming, and they readily agreed to that. And I put a condition that therefore the pictures and visuals will be captured only from my camera. But they said, we have some people, but we pledge that this will happen as per you. Then I picked up a senior officer from IB as the witness who will ensure that this pledge is not broken. And then we took the soup and broke with the understanding that the news will be broken with other leaders also coming and their visuals at least, whether the next day or those who had already come. All together. But some 5 minutes after the ministers left, the officer from IB came huffing and puffing and said, sir, I don't know how to tell you. The news has gone and it's playing on the television. I'm so infuriated. I'll find out and figure out from, I don't know what, internet, cyber analysis or something. By that time, it had already gone. So it was a kind of breach of confidence on the part of the ministers to do it singly. On top of that, what they had done was they had used a photographer who they had brought together among their staff, who had taken visuals from an angle where only those two ministers were seen and not even the 5 leaders from Ladakh. So they made it into something like that, and therefore people reacted in the ways they did. So it was never meant to be just 2 of those. Even if it had been, that's not considered anything but victory in Ladakh. So this confusion I was sad to see, after the fast was broken, just to add to the details I'm sharing.
Absolutely. No, I mean, just 2 follow-up questions for that. So the thing is, this is not the first time you are dealing with the government of India. They have broken promises in the past. They have broken assurances in the past. So, I mean, what made you believe that they would keep this, given how conscious they are of their image, nationally at least? Why? I mean, don't you think it was a little, I would say, naive?
Naive. Well, I thought an IB senior officer standing out as a witness and the minister seeing that was done, I made sure with whatever I could. Therefore, I say trust is the biggest deficit in this country at the moment. I have seen breach of trust at every step, every moment, and it makes me really sad about the state of the nation, because nobody can trust anything. Students can't trust the examinations, leaders can't trust the elections. I can't trust the words they give as for me in this case and for Ladakh 6 years ago. So that kind of sadly reinforced what I
Yeah,
felt.
because I think a lot of people, after seeing those images early on, when it first broke, I think right around 12:30 or something, right after midnight, a lot of people initially saw it as capitulation, that you have capitulated, you have lowered your demands, and you have taken soup from the hands of the union minister. So, So, I mean, what is your response to people who say this?
No, as I said, the lowering from resignation of the education minister was on purpose. That was not something I was pressured into. That was the wisdom or strategic thing to do I saw. That was by design. But this release of news in this manner was a breach of trust.
Since you broke your fast on assurances from the government, a anti-paper league bill has been passed, but compensation hasn't materialized yet. FIRs against protesters continue in several states, and the Supreme Court has allowed FIRs to proceed against those with, quote, criminal antecedents, that is, those who have committed, quote, grave and heinous offenses. As you had mentioned while we were discussing this interview earlier, you have asked the government to give you a status update on the pledges made in the agreement with you. Do you have any updates for us?
Yes, as we speak, I have been reminding them of an update, and I'll check once again because barring that, without that, I'll have to say things that I would not like to. Anyway, I'll check and let you know the last that I can. On the front of the FIRs, I think they have taken some steps for students, genuine students, and small issues. The Supreme Court or the courts have not stopped the governments from taking it back, which is fine. And heinous crimes, that I would agree. If there are elements that are trying to take advantage of a genuine organic movement to do things that are detrimental to the national security, and anybody would agree that that should not be allowed. So they are taking steps, and I'm yet to see what else happens. I can't say they have breached on that yet, unless they do. On the compensation, which I thought was the easiest, and I'm sure they will, and that's the update that I'm waiting for, and I'll let you know in a moment. And on the bill in the parliament, they did have a discussion and a bill in the parliament. So I think that has happened. But yes, I do agree with people who say that there should be more. Just making it into a punitive thing rather than a preventive thing is not enough. So, but I'm hoping that there'll be a follow-up of not only a reform in the examination system, but in the education system also.
Yeah.
So that I still hold the hope. Regarding the compensations, I see no reason for them to delay. Let's see very soon.
Because, I mean, there is a sense that the government is backtracking on some of these assurances. Now, the reason why I asked this is because recently a minor protester who was seen verbally abusing the Prime Minister. So 6 FIRs have been filed against this minor, 15-year-old girl. And a lot of women protesters who were there have been subject to nasty abuse, threats, doxing from the Prime Minister's and this government supporters more broadly. So what is your response to these sort of developments in the past week or so?
Generally, I would agree with people who say that you can't be selective in punishing some such minor girls and shying away from these trolls who are always with, the choicest and worst things to say. I am a victim of these trolls all the time, except that there seems to be a change from BJP trolls to now Congress trolls also doing that. We'll go to that later. But all these people have all the freedom to say whatever, and no cyber police questions them. And these little girls are subjected to all kinds of harassments. That's not fair. You have to be fair. You are welcome to do this if you really think this is a heinous crime, but then don't ignore or, overlook others who are doing the same or even worse, and they are very mature majors, not young minors like these.
Absolutely, because the young minor, 15-year-old, her and her mother have been forced to leave their home in Noida because of these threats, these repeated threats, these repeated attempts at doxing, and I just feel like I think the Prime Minister could have done more to rein his supporters in. I mean, that's my personal opinion. But
and if I was in the Prime Minister's shoes, I would use it as a gauge of frustration of young people, of their anger, and think of how do I change my ways so that my people do not abuse me like that. My people love me and not hate me like these. This should be a good signal also. Not that I approve of what the girl said, but for a mature, wise leader, it's more an indication of what the young people feel about them also.
Absolutely. Now, on to the acts of police brutality on July 20th. Now, neither the Delhi police nor the MHA have acknowledged any error or regret over the use of lathi charge, tear gas, and even pellet guns against the protesters. Should the government apologize to protesters, and should Delhi police and the MHA leadership be held accountable? And what would accountability look like to you?
You're asking the wrong person. A Ladakhi is the wrongest person to ask this, because compared to what was done to Ladakhi protesters on 24th September, this was nothing. I agree with people. How can a government and a security force like police use weapons that could leave them challenged for life? But then when you ask a Ladakhi, the parameters are very different. We have seen pellet guns are toys. We have seen serious live bullets being used, aimed at heads and chests of young people protesting, and that too after the so-called violent incidents. That is under judicial inquiry. I'm sure a fair outcome is expected. But what I know is that the killings happened long after the so-called violence, because we don't even know whether that was planted, done as a strategy, like you found trucks loaded with stones. Similar things, we are told, happened in Leh. But anyway, I'm saying way after the incidents, people were killed. Some 10 people at least were almost dead. Finally, it became only 4. That was more the miracle of our doctors in Leh than the people who fired at them. So if you ask somebody, I'm really confused. On one hand, people who have defended the nation like soldiers without uniform, without salaries, are subjected to indiscriminate weapons and firing like you don't do on the border with China. You use sticks and whatever tiny weapons. You don't use those guns that were used on young Ladakhis that day. So compared to that, I can not say this was the worst thing, but I must make it also clear that this was very bad. I'm only asking how about the young people in Leh. So the question to me is more justice for those people and the unjust acts on that day in Leh, and definitely an inquiry and accountability from the security forces, police or whatever forces, and the people who gave them those directions. In this case, they say, I saw somewhere, the firing orders are not given by ministers, they are given by magistrates. In Leh, 3 magistrates and none of them signed the firing orders. And yet, so many people were killed. When will we hear about what happened then? And we are eagerly waiting for the judicial inquiry, a fair judicial inquiry. In that also. I'm sorry, I'm connecting the two because I'm totally torn how to look at what happened in Delhi. It was very bad, but then what do I make of what happened in Leh?
So because also I think Gitanjali was also roughed up during the march. I think her hair was pulled. I think that was what we had heard. And so what did she tell you about how the police behaved, and how were you following developments on the ground on that day, on the 20th of July, when the police, as a result of the police action that took place, how did you follow those developments?
Yeah, it was maybe her wisdom. She never told me about any pains or injuries she received. She told me about how others faced things. So I didn't learn. I'm hearing from you the first time. But I did see generally a lot of lathi charge and all that, but I was more touched and moved by these strong, well-built young men who were taking all the lathi and not reverting, because that's what I was saying for several days before, that we will take pain on our own bodies, our own selves, will not inflict pain on others. And that is satyagraha. So I was really moved to tears by scenes where they were taking lathi on their bodies, but not, they could easily have handled few policemen brutally even, but none of them did that on 20th. There were girls protecting others. That was a day full of such scenes. Unfortunately, the mainstream media were looking for and picking anywhere a policeman was being chased. The rate at which they were repeating few such scenes told me how few those must have been, and how proud I felt about these people in their youth who can be very violent, were taking it upon themselves.
On the question of accountability for what happened on July 20th, what would accountability look like for you? I mean, can you just sort of give us your sense of what would accountability look like? Because students were hit, their heads were smashed. There were women who had police lathis who, were pushing lathis into their backsides. Like, there were some very nasty things that happened on that day as well. So what would accountability look like to you?
Well, more than that, I'm aghast that the capital of the largest democracy in the world has BNS 163 or 144 section applied permanently. Okay? That's against our constitution. And on that day, strangely, although it is said to be permanently in application, that day, as per protocols, they never announced that, they never displayed it, and therefore the protesters were never communicated in the way they were supposed to, that this is a violation of this law. So therefore, it is a violation if at all there was such a section applied. And if it was not, since there were no announcement, no exhibition or depiction of any such banners, then why can't people march to their own parliament? If there was, then what is the ground of having such a law enforced or a section enforced permanently in the capital? Every country in the world, you can march to your parliament and peacefully demonstrate. Why is it a crime in our country when it is peaceful protesters just marching to the parliament to urge the leaders to discuss this issue and make sure it never happens and take accountability of this time also. So that itself was a kind of violation of what the spirit of our constitution is. And on top of that, the way they were beaten and manhandled was just too much for a normal, neutral mind and eyes. But for me, being a Ladakhi, it was all the more confusing. I was, on one hand, sad and angry of how these young people were treated. On the other hand, on how those young people were treated in Ladakh in September. So, yes, it was brutally manhandled, and I'm sure there should be inquiries, as should be on people with heinous crime background, so should be on people who committed heinous excesses on peaceful young people that day.
What about the leadership, like the Delhi Police Commissioner, for example, or the Home Minister that the Delhi Police reports to? Should they at least apologize or...
Yes.
Or
Very much so. And I think not only in the case of Delhi, but also in the case of Ladakh, even more. But definitely, because this is the current one we are discussing, in the case of Delhi, that's the least you can do. If something was out of place or disproportionate to the situation, the least you can do is apologize. And I hope they do, rather than getting other people to apologize who did much smaller mistakes and misjudgments, like these little girls.
Would you call for their resignation?
I don't know, but there should be an internal scrutiny. And if it is found that they are squarely guilty, I would. And I would expect that they do it.
Absolutely. Now, on the day itself, 20th July, the CJP had said that they would march with you to Parliament. Now, obviously, you were detained by the Delhi police by this time. So did you ask the Delhi police for permission to join the march? And if you weren't under detention, would you have joined the march yourself?
Oh, yes, definitely. I asked not the Delhi police because although they were behind the scene, overtly, on the face of it, it was the hospital that was stopping me from. And it was done in a very, I would say, filmy style. They wanted me away from the protest, and they used the hospital's ICU rules. And they made sure I was kept in ICU by fudging the lab reports. There's a long story about that. Maybe I'll share some other time. They fudged the hospital was made to fiddle with laboratory reports of my potassium levels, etc., to show it was at life-threatening stage. Whereas a day before, doctors at Jantar Mantar itself had the same minerals well within limits. So, yeah, it was very, very unbelievably. You can only, जैसा फिल्मों में होता है, हो रहा था हूबहू.
No, I mean, it's interesting that you said that the hospital sort of fiddled, that's the word that you use, fiddled with your records to keep you in the ICU. So, I mean, could you elaborate on that little and that filmy style that you talked about as to how this took place?
So the hospital came with this report saying you have only potassium levels at 2.29, which is life-threatening. Then we showed the potassium levels from just maybe 18 hours before, where it was 3.5 or 3.6, which is within limits, okay? And they kept saying, no, this is the latest, and this is very serious. We can't let you go anywhere. Then we said, okay, take another sample. This time we'll send one sample to your lab and another sample to a private lab, independent lab. And they stopped us from doing that for 11 hours. From 11 in the morning till about 10 in the night, they didn't agree to a sample being sent to a private lab. Imagine people who are saying, I'm in a life-threatening state, stopping the tests for 11 hours. I could have died in that. So they were not ready to be, tried in this way. And finally, at 11 in the night, they agreed, and mischievously, they sent it to a private lab of their control. This was the hospital doing, of course, on the instructions of whoever was above. No wonder I was taken to a government hospital where they have control. The doctors, one thing I don't want to leave people with an impression is that the government hospital was bad. They were very good doctors, but some, management in the hospital were totally overtaken by some kind of virus. They were working for somebody else somewhere and were doing all this. I mean, you can imagine yourself, why should they have a problem with the blood sample being sent to 2 labs? They didn't allow it for the longest, 11 hours or so, thereby, in their words, putting my life at risk for 11 hours. And then the next day, they did a clever thing. They improved their potassium levels to like 3.2 or 3.3 so that it's not so drastic, And the lab report was also 3.4 or something close to. So it was total breach of trust everywhere. I felt very sad about my country that you can't trust anybody. You can fiddle with lab reports and keep the person on the pretext of being ICU. Actually, they were just keeping me away from the protest site and the march. So I wrote to the director and the superintendent of the hospital saying, I feel very fine, my lab reports are better, let me please participate in the march. So I didn't write to police because in my face were the hospital norms of not allowing an ICU patient. But again, they gave this and that reason, you can't. It was not a hospital, it was a jail. It was a makeshift jail with doctors instead of guards with stars. They were behind the scene, outside the door, very much there.
Yeah.
And every few minutes, the doctors would speak to someone and take instructions.
So interestingly, CJP spokespersons Ashutosh Ranka and Saurav Das were negotiating with the government throughout talks with JP Nadda and Jitendra Singh. And were you involved in that process in any way, or did they consult you for any advice? Can you just sort of talk to us on that? Like, did they ever reach out to you for any sort of recommendations or advice on how to negotiate with the government?
By that time, it had become almost impossible to connect. There were phone jammers at Jantar Mantar and complications, if not total ban, at Safdarjung and even Medanta. So by that time, we were kind of in the habit of using our own intelligence. So maybe at some points possible even, I don't know, but we had gotten used to being totally disconnected. We were taking decisions and most of the times it was in sync without being in, constant consultation. So yes, it was not possible to consult for things, but whenever possible, we did try to reach one another.
On the CJP itself, now you before joining them, I mean, you didn't know any of these people, who are leading this movement beforehand, even though you had called yourself an honorary cockroach. Why did you choose to sit on an indefinite hunger strike for this cause? And did you have any second thoughts about it during the fast? Honestly, tell me.
So the credit or whatever else all goes to the Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh. Yeah, for getting me there. I thank him because I didn't get into a bad cause. I got into a good cause and helped a very good cause and helped the nation think differently and its leaders work differently, I hope, in the coming months and years. But anyway, the credit goes to him because I had made a casual remark in Delhi when I was here for the talks for Ladakh with the Home Ministry. A journalist from PTI asked me, while talking about Ladakh issue, "Sir, what do you think of these Cockroach Janta Party which has sprung up?" And I didn't want to mix up things, so I told her, look, this is not related to Ladakh issue. If you really want to have my opinion, then you can ask me separately. But I'm talking about Ladakh's talks with the MHA. So we ended our interview, and sure enough, she came afterwards to say, can you now share your opinion about CJP? That's when you will find still, it's there, when I said this is a very creative expression of young people and the government should respect it, take the message and not kill the messengers. It's a message in a most creative way. And I feel I am an honorary cockroach because I do not qualify to be a cockroach. That's what I said. All that I said was this.
Even now, do you think you're an honorary cockroach? Have you not fully qualified?
Yeah. No, I haven't become lazy enough to qualify. Nor the other qualifications, age, of course. But yes, I'm an honorary cockroach. So that was a very light-hearted remark. I forgot, but not the Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh. He invited me and Gitanjali for a tea event or whatever, meeting. It's all there on my social media handles. And he put it in a very not so pleasant way, saying that we pulled him up for making such remarks and so on. I ignored it, thinking he has to please some bosses. I shouldn't give it the attention that it seeks. But then it appeared in many newspapers, at which point then I came out and I had to now, because the thing he said in that meeting was that these people are not good for the nation. They are controlled from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and America. So that made me research on them, and that made them connect with me. Had he not done this, there was no way I would have gone into who are CJPs, nor would they have bothered to connect to me. Because of this video that I made after their breach of trust again, they connected. Abhijit Deepke connected and said, "Sir, we are this, we are not this." And then I said, "Can we talk?" And he called, and I gauged their intentions, their thoughts, their frustrations. And I thought, these are good people. And they have no connections whatsoever, with other countries, except that there were young people from these countries who were following them in very small numbers. That thereby establishing that, at least in this case, India was leading and other countries were following. There was no sign of any, support or control from any of these countries. So I thought I should actually support these people. They turn out to be well-intentioned people. So that's when I said, okay, now I'm going to come when you come on 6th June to India. And then later I announced that if he is arrested at airport, I'll go on indefinite fast. So that's when I announced for the first time my fast. I don't know whether for this reason or other reasons, the government easily gave them permission, no arrest, nothing, and I could come and join them on 6th and later on 20th before I flew to Switzerland. So our connection grew more and more, all thanks to
To the
you
Lieutenant
know
Governor,
who.
to the LG. So, I mean, on this particular point did you? I mean, initially, of course, there were sort of the crowds weren't that much in the early days. Not too many students. There were, of course, some number of students, but not too many. At any point, did you feel, okay, maybe this is not working, or that did you feel at some point that you had some second thoughts about being on this hunger strike? So, I mean, what kept you going eventually?
I did not. Everybody else did. I did not because by this time I was an experienced the hunger striker, you could say. And I know that people are not moved initially. They come in small numbers. They're trying to understand. They're trying to question. There are rumors spread about you eating at night and all that. And people have no yardstick to understand. And I knew that as days grow, I didn't react to those telling me I eat in the washroom and all that, because the doctor's reports would reveal in a few days when sugar levels go down, when kilograms go nosediving, they understand. And that's exactly what happened by the 10th, 11th day when 6 kilos were lost and I was going through a difficult time, which, because I expected, was not as difficult as it would be for any other person. So I was thinking this would happen if it has to happen. And if it doesn't, I don't think much about efforts wasted in a good cause. So I was happy to stay no matter what. And more than not, I understood that people will see and sense the urgency. So this is a great tool, a great path of satyagraha that Mahatma Gandhi showed. And each time I sit on such fasts, I learn more. Because not only could I have thought nothing is happening, I should leave it. Everybody who visited me, everybody, the tallest leaders to youngest people would say, "Sir, please don't do it. Break your fast. These are not the people who listen to anshans and fasts. Even British would listen, but these are not the kind who would bother about you." And I didn't clearly understand a dimension of fasts at that time, which I understood later, that it's actually not to do with you and the rulers or the leaders in the government. It's not their sensitivity or apathy that decides whether they listen to you or not. It's actually your hunger and your suffering is in communication not with the leaders who can ignore and who can let you die. It's more in communication with the people of the nation who they cannot ignore. So it works very differently through an indirect rebound rather than direct to the leaders. So as days grew and my health conditions were worsening, it moved the people who moved the leaders, because they may not have cared about me, but they cared about the people who would keep them in their seats or bring them down. So it was not my health condition that made them. Maybe some leaders, yes, in every setup, there are all kinds of people. I'm sure there are good people in the ruling party also who genuinely felt for me, but those who were tough and could have let me die were not moved by my condition. They were moved by their own health. Moved by possibilities about their own health when they saw people moved and ready to do anything.
So also, aside from you, there were four other students who are also on hunger strike. I think are members of the student organization ISA. Did you ever have a chance to talk to them, have discussions with them, and sort of what were the conversations like with them?
Not so much conversations, because by some days I was down, they were down, but I would go meet them. Communicate not so much verbally, but give them my, feelings and strength to them. Every few mornings, I would go on a little walk with support from people to go to each of the places where they were sitting on Anshan. We tried even to bring them to the stage, but it was practically not easy to manage that. So then at one point, I was even saying maybe I should sit with them during the nights and only come on stage during the day. But anyway, I would meet them in their places, and not so much conversations, just exchange of strength and support visually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's interesting because as an experienced hunger striker like yourself, how do you think they did? As you know, in this probably their first major hunger strike that they were engaged in. So, what do you say to the resolve that they showed?
I salute it, but I think for them it must have been a little easier seeing somebody who understands it right before them, compared to somebody who doesn't know what happens and sitting for the first time. Yeah, so it's always a little more. Not much, but a little more of confidence that we are in a community or a group is all that I could give them.
So last leg of this interview. My question is, some commentators suggest that your involvement in the CJP protest may have disrupted the apex body KDA talks with the government that had been progressing reasonably well in the last few months, and that the government is now waiting for your recovery before resuming these talks. This is what I've heard through the grapevine. Secondly, others have called the way you broke your fast. I mean, you've, of course, explained the circumstances behind it, but they've called it a capitulation and question what it signals for your role in future negotiations with the MHA. How do you respond to both of these concerns?
Oh, quite contradictorily. I think everybody knows among the leadership, it actually helped speed up what was held up. Where it was held up was at the drafting of the minutes of what happened on 22nd May in Delhi, when the government conceded on having an assembly with powers over all bureaucrats and all those things. They were not ready to put in black and white, and without that, it meant nothing. And they took the longest to do anything about that. There were press conferences calling the government to keep to their words. Nothing was working. And leadership was saying that perhaps they are waiting for His Holiness Dalai Lama to bless Ladakh by his presence, which is when all protests stop in Ladakh to respect His Holiness's presence. So the leadership in both Leh and Kargil read it as a strategy to keep holding it till His Holiness's visit, and then there is silence for 2 months, and by that they can do whatever they want, and people would have forgotten, or they would have done many things to undermine what was achieved in Delhi. And therefore, we held a meeting in Leh where both Kargil leadership and Leh leadership, KDA and Apex, joined to discuss how can we manage this situation, which is when I proposed that since we can't do anything in Leh under the circumstances for 2 months, I'm ready to take the extreme step of another Anshan, not in Leh, but in Delhi. By that time, we were already in discussion with CJP. I was going to attend their second meeting on 20th June. So this meeting took place on 19th June. So I said, I can, because education and environment, which is how I see Ladakh's issues, are closest to my heart. These two can be related through my passion for both. And I am going to support CJP in their educational struggle. How about me supporting Ladakh also, together with the educational issues that are close to my heart? How about taking it up from Delhi henceforth, since we can't do in Leh? They all agreed and welcomed this. And that's when I flew to Delhi, participated in 20th June meeting at Jantar Mantar, and they were going to start the sit-in from that day. And I announced that if it is not resolved by the time I'm back on 28th from this science conference in Switzerland, then I'll sit on hunger strike, Anshan. And from Switzerland, I announced that if the government resolves even one of the two, either educational accountability as demanded by CJP or the democracy restoration as demanded by Ladakhi leadership, I will not sit on fast. A very serious decision. Very strangely, they had 1 week to act, the government. By 28th, they had done nothing. So I had no choice but to sit on hunger strike. But even stranger is that 4th day or so after my hunger strike, they resolved the Ladakh issue, the stalemate, by giving in writing minutes of the meeting, which was as the leadership in Ladakh demanded. So that was resolved. If they had done that 4 days before, I had said I would avoid hunger strike, a serious thing like that, if they resolve even one. So I think there were delays, unwarranted, unnecessary delays of the MHA in moving swiftly. Now that I had already sat for 4 days, they, I think, expected that we can just resolve it any time and he'll dump the students and walk to Ladakh. That I couldn't do, If I had not sat, I could have said that the government has heeded to one of our demands. Therefore, I'll sit on protest, but not on hunger. I could have sat like the others without hunger strike, extreme step. But 4th day, I couldn't ditch them. I had to sit with them till something was resolved. So that's how I had to complete it till their demands were met. Yeah.
So, also in a recent tweet, Sajad Kargeli of the KDA says that the talks with the government of India have yet to see meaningful progress. Do you agree that the MHA is stalling? And what will you do if the government continues to stall? And more broadly, how do you see the Ladakh issue moving forward from here?
Oh, yes. You had a second question also. Anyway, for this one, the minutes was the biggest hurdle, because if it doesn't come down in black and white, it means nothing. That being resolved is a great progress. It's not great progress really. It's normal achieved, nothing great. But yes, we had such problems even to get the normal. So you can imagine. Now it is more about the drafts. After the minutes, it's the drafts to be discussed. There, I think both are expecting the other to bring the drafts. But I think it's the government who should share the drafts with the Ladakhi leadership, because the Ladakhi leadership already shared their demands in a draft which was full statehood and 6th schedule. So they know that. Now they have done a little give and take and agreed to assembly with all those powers. Now they are the ones who should share their draft of what they really mean in detail. to which the Ladakhi leadership will react, either saying this is exactly what we want, or this misses this and that, or whatever it is. So it progresses further. So I hope the government comes up with a draft of what they have on offer. And the Ladakhi leadership, takes it from there. So I wouldn't call it stalled yet, but around now, it's close to that.
Yeah. But I'm saying, what would you do if they continue to stall? Would you, God forbid, to go on another hunger strike, given your health and given the toll it has taken on your health? Would you consider
I
it?
won't be able to reveal even if I knew what we will do, but we'll do something that they wouldn't like, especially at this stage.
Yeah. Absolutely. And finally, one last question. With the CJP leadership set to hold more talks with the government, how do you see your role in the movement going forward?
Well, I'm there to support any good causes in the nation and on the planet. So yesterday, I was there supporting CJP. Day before yesterday, I was there supporting Ladakh issues, and I continue to. Some may be successfully concluded. Others, I'm waiting for a successful conclusion, like the case of Ladakh. When democracy is restored, safeguards are in place, I may not have a role to play. I'll move on to some other very just, very compelling issue. So similarly, if there is a need, I will always be in support of the issues. If they are happily, at a good conclusion and are doing well, cruising, I'm more at takeoffs. I call myself a bulldozer, not a car. Bulldozers are used to make the road when it is to break the mountains and fill the valleys and make a road. Its role is at building the road. Once the road is built, you don't want bulldozers running on the road. So once the road is built and people are happily commuting, I hope my role is over and I'm cutting another mountain for a new road.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for your views, for your time, and it was lovely having you on Newslaundry. Thank you so much, sir.
Same here. I loved this exchange.